Okay. So yesterday we saw what is a pod. Okay, we saw the architecture of Kubernetes, different component of the Kubernetes, and what what is the what are the main um, like how do you create a pod using YAML file? Okay, we also saw some YAML syntax, very basic YAML syntax. YAML YAML is a very small, like very like easy language to learn. It's just some markup language, and you can learn it in like 1 hour as well. Okay, so this doesn't have a lot of complexity, and this is used in a wide variety of tools. So if you have a understanding of how YAML is work, how YAML works, this will give you an edge over others. Okay, so what we are doing is okay. So here, uh, so we talked about pod, how to create a pod, and let's try to create it again. Okay, so this is the YAML file for a pod. I'll give you this handout so that you can also go through it, okay, as a reference. Okay. Um, so this YAML file creates a pod, okay, and in the last class we saw how to create a Kubernetes object out of YAML file. Okay, so we saw that there are 4 important blocks in any Kubernetes object. Okay, and they are API version, okay, kind, okay, metadata, and spec. Okay, so these are the 4 important proper keys that should be present in your Kubernetes resource file or Kubernetes manifest file. Okay, so the YAML file, this YAML file or YAML file are called as Kubernetes manifest file, or also called as resource. Okay, resources. So so API version, there are different API version for each object. Okay, and we can find it out here. So Kubernetes API version versus object. Okay, so API overview. Here you will see, let's see V1 here. Okay, I'm searching for V1 here. Okay, and you will see V1 API here. If I go to API groups, okay, you will see that this API group has some set of object. Okay, let me where I can find the list. Okay, SQL list of supported API groups, enabling disabling API convention, API concepts. Okay, something has changed here. Yes, here. Yeah. Hello. Sorry. Um, Anybody asking question? Okay. So you see here, here are the examples of API calls. So your client, right? Your client interacts with API yeah, API server in the Kubernetes. So what it does is it talks via API version. So there are different API version available in Kubernetes. Over the year, there were new APIs introduced, and they were introduced to support additional resources. Okay, so V1 API, when it was created, it supported namespaces, pods. Okay, and it also support if you see other here, right, it supports namespace and pod. Okay, and if you want to create application, you will use apps V1 and deployment. Okay, so if I want to create a deployment, I will use apps V1. Okay, if you want to create a deployment with namespace, you need to use app v1 and namespace and deployments. So all these are examples of all these this API version tells you what object you can create inside it. Okay. So here the API version, like if you create a pod, you need a API version v1. Okay. If you create a deployment, you will use apps v1, right? So these the API version tell you which version of API you want to use. Kind is the type of the object you are creating. So kind can be pod, it can be deployment, it can be service, it can be cron job. Okay. It can be simple job, it can be daemon set. Okay. So these are the kind of object you can create in Kubernetes. Okay. And you can also create additional objects that are not present by default in Kubernetes by extending the Kubernetes using operators. Okay. So that is a different concept. But so the bottom line is kind defines the type of object you want to create. Okay. Metadata contains additional information about the object. Okay. So the very important metadata, one of the important metadata is name. Okay. When you create an object, you need to give it a name. So name is the name of the object. Okay. And you can also specify namespace. Okay. We haven't talked about namespace as of now. We will talk about in today's class. So namespace you can provide labels or tags to your objects. Okay. So that you can find a group of resources by specifying the labels. Okay. So you can specify labels, and you can in the labels you can say owner. Okay. You can specify app, right? Is it a front-end app or back-end app, or is it just a microservice, right? Or you can say how it is connected to internet. You can also specify the SSL settings. Okay. So all these things you can specify. They will act as a um uh, tags attached to the objects. Okay. And using those tags you can filter out your objects. Okay. These are similar to tagging. So when you see a YouTube video, right, you see tags here. Okay. So when you see any YouTube video, okay, if you open any video, you will see tags behind tags under the under this there are lots of so if you open anything, okay, like say this graph, you will see some some tags here, right? Okay, so these are the maintainship, these are tags here. So when you click on crab, so all videos related to crab you can view. Okay, so tags are important when you want to group your application together. Okay, so when you want to query Kubernetes, just pass the tag name and all resources related to that tag name will appear. So labels are used there. Okay, spec is how your object is defined. So this part will be different for different kind of object. Okay, uh, so if you specify a pod, okay, so pod requires containers. Okay, containers. So and in container you can define in the containers, because pod can run multiple container, right? You can define multiple containers here. Okay, so this container is list of container, and in the container you define name. So you say container one. Okay, and you need to define the image that the container will be created for. So image is like container one image. Okay, and you can create another container, container two. Okay,